Hello, everyone. Tom Baker from Steering Wheel Nation with you, and we have an exclusive for you. We are going to talk about Austin Dillon's penalty and Joey Logano's penalty as a result of Sunday's racing at Richmond Raceway. First of all, what a finish, right? I mean, it was crazy the way that this went. And we're going to pick this apart a little bit because NASCAR's decision has been handed down. And here's how this went. NASCAR officials ruled on Wednesday that Austin Dillon's win at Richmond Raceway does not count toward eligibility for the Cup Series playoffs. Now, this decision 3 days after the Richard Childress Racing driver bashed his way to victory, according to the NASCAR.com article, by crashing Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin on the final lap of Sunday's Cookout 400. Now, Dillon's penalty was the most severe of a handful of those issued after Sunday's race, and it's one of the most severe penalties NASCAR's ever handed out for this sort of an infraction. Okay, now I should also point out that Dillon and the three team were docked 25 points in both the drivers and owners standings, dropping Dillon from 26th to 31st in the former rankings. Last, pretty much. Officials also indicated that the rescinded playoff eligibility for Sunday's win applies to both the drivers and owners championships. Oh, by the way, this makes it the first encumbered win in quite a while for NASCAR. Now, Elton Sawyer, NASCAR's senior vice president of competition, said the penalty stemmed from the total chain of events through turns 3 and 4 on the final lap. And here's the quote. I think in all due respect to the appeal process, and I think that's, by the way, a telling way to start his quote. I think in all due respect to the appeal process, more on that later, we looked at this and the totality of everything that happened as you enter turn 3, as the cars got to the start-finish line. As we looked through all of that data, we came to the conclusion that a line had been crossed. Our sport has been based on going for many, many years, forever, on good, hard racing. Contact has been acceptable. We felt like in this case that the line was crossed. Logano was fined $50,000 as well for his actions after the race when he spun the tires of his number 22 Penske Ford in anger near the RCR number 3 team's pit box. That show of disgust is a violation of the member code of conduct for compromising the safety of others. No kidding. Sent celebrants from Dillon's team scattering on pit road and drew a stern rebuke from NASCAR officials at the scene, several who had to be either moved or jumped back out of the way, I might point out. Okay, now, in addition to all that, NASCAR competition officials also suspended Brandon Benesch, the number 3 team spotter for 3 Cup Series races, for his guidance. You call that guidance? His guidance of Dillon atop the grandstand roof. A review of transmissions from the number 3 team radio revealed Benesch saying, "Wreck him," as Dillon battled alongside Hamlin with the checkered flag in sight. Now, in a statement posted to social media after all of this came down, Richard Childress Racing announced it will appeal the penalties levied to Dillon and the number 3 team. Representatives from Team Penske said Wednesday that Logano accepts his penalty and will not plan to appeal. That's probably a wise decision. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit, shall we? First of all, this whole situation develops on and off over time because NASCAR, as Elton Sawyer himself said Sunday night and again in his statement, NASCAR has been a contact sport for a long, long time. Now, there are only really 2 types of contact: avoidable and unavoidable. Austin Dillon may have had both on Sunday night, but according to NASCAR, it doesn't matter. Now, in most forms of racing, if you think IndyCar, you think F1, you think sports car racing, okay, this is how we decide whether we're penalizing or not penalizing. Was it avoidable? Was it unavoidable? If it's avoidable, you get a penalty. Simple as that. It's easy to see. Now, once in a while, are you going to get it wrong? Is it going to be avoidable when you said it was unavoidable, whatever? You're going to make a wrong call? Sure. But this is a very simple way to keep control. And they enforce the penalty on the spot. It's enforced during the race or just after the race. It's not days later. Okay. Now, NASCAR, on the other hand, the problem that we have here is that NASCAR wants the contact because it sells tickets, right? This is what the sport grew up on. It grew up on rough, hard, and tumble racing. It's been going on since the 50s. Now, here's the thing. When I look at what happened on Sunday, in my opinion, I think this was the first bit of contact with Logano was purely avoidable. Everyone knows, and Dillon did not deny, by the way, that he just drove into Logano on purpose, right? But wait a minute. This is a contact sport, isn't it? He made contact. Well, but that was too much contact. Really? Okay. So can you define where the line is between acceptable dirty driving and unacceptable dirty driving? Because all of it is the same. It's still dirty driving. It's avoidable contact. So Dillon dumping Joey Logano was totally avoidable, right? So in most every other form of motorsports, he's going to be penalized. If I'm the race director, I'm throwing the yellow, putting Dillon in the garage and either restarting the race or I'm ending it with Logano and Hamlin first and second. In some sort of way, I'm fixing the situation and not taking 3 days to do it. And the message is clear to the rest of the drivers. Don't go there or this is you next, right? NASCAR's dilemma with these things is since they want the contact to sell tickets, now we're starting to have to sort of judge degrees of contact or individual cases. That's why it takes a few days. You got to really sit and think about because you've got no hard and fast rule to use to tell you that it's black or white. So now you got to take every situation individually, and this is how you come up with a sort of moving line of how far is too far. For 3/4 of a century, contact is acceptable. We said this was too far. Why? Because he hit two cars? Because he was too far back? Which is it? What is it? Is it all of the above? If so, where's the line that Elton Sawyer referred to in NASCAR's ruling? Where is the line and what is the line so all drivers can know what that is and not cross it the next time? How can you write a rule about acceptable, avoidable contact? That's my first question. Now, of course, there's no question in my mind about the Hamlin part, right? The Hamlin part to me, I believe, was not completely intentional. And I know the SMT data shows Austin turning left, but there's also, it's true that Hamlin was coming up the track because that's the natural line you take off of 4. I think they just met, is what I think. Now the result's the same, right? I don't need to worry about that piece of it to enforce a penalty. To me, Austin Dillon getting the penalty he got, if he'd gotten fined and had points taken or whatever, fair enough. I'm all for that. He absolutely should be penalized. But you're going to take this win away? So tell me now exactly why this win got taken away and all the other wins where we've seen a driver spin another driver, crash another driver. We've seen Joey do it. We've seen Denny do it. We've seen Kyle Larson do it. We've seen many other drivers, okay? Avoidable, intentional contact, right? Okay, so tell me now how I, as a driver, take this ruling and know exactly how far I can go and how you consistently now enforce this sort of line. And that's the thing we're still missing here. Do I believe that Richard Childress wins the appeal? No way. No way this happens, because NASCAR is not going to allow this penalty, this playoff. They've taken his playoff eligibility away. They're not going to allow that to come back. They're just not going to allow it. I don't believe they will. So at this point, where are we here? What do we learn from this? Well, there are a couple of things I saw on the internet that we can speak of to see if we now understand. One, he was way too far back to hit him. This is what somebody said is the reason why we went too far. We were too far back. Okay. So how do you write a rule that says you can only be this far back? Okay. Name a car length. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? And how do we write the rule? And then how do we enforce it? Maybe we could build some software for the computer brain that the cars have now. Maybe the software could track in real time how far back the car is from the car in front. And maybe there's a dump light or a dump indicator that turns green when they're close enough so they don't violate the rule, and red when they're not. Otherwise, I don't know how you enforce that. How do you do that? Okay, second thing. He took out 2 cars. That makes it worse. Well, I guess if you believe that he dumped Hamlin on purpose, but even then, why does the number of cars really matter? I mean, Dale Earnhardt took out 4 at Richmond when he right hooked DW into the wall, including himself. Kyle Petty, I think, was in 5th, and he ended up winning his first race. Now, and here again, don't give me you can't go back 40 years. It's different now. The sport's evolved. No, it hasn't. Not in this way, and that's the problem. NASCAR is still trying to have their cake and eat it too. And I'm not being disrespectful here. I'm just pointing out the truth. If you want to evolve in the competition way, you have to stop it all, because otherwise we're going to be doing this again in a month, 2 months, 6 months, or a year. Okay. Number 3, Denny Hamlin said on his podcast, "Please stop this before you ruin the integrity of our sport." Denny, don't you think allowing any sort of intentional contact to win a race, i.e. dirty driving, ruins the integrity? Or if not, then again, tell me where the line is so that we all can know. And then we know in black and white, and it can be enforced on the spot at the track. We don't have to have 3 days of meetings in Daytona to decide. It's hilarious watching everyone try to justify why there should be some dirty driving allowed, and calling it a racing move, by the way, but to say that this went too far. Then he keeps talking about intentional wrecking. Any intentional hitting is the same as intentional wrecking. You can't say, well, we'll let this one go because he can wreck. And here's the thing. If NASCAR is a contact sport, how many cars you contact shouldn't matter. Should it? Is there a rule against taking out more than 1 car to win a race? This seems to me that would sell even more tickets, right? Because now Dillon's got 2 targets on his back. So let's get to the second car Austin hit for a minute. Now, look, I believe the in-car footage from Dillon's car matches his story. I know the SMT data shows him turning left. I get it. Also, you can see Hamlin going up the track, which he would be. I'm not blaming Denny. I'm just saying, I think in this case, you can say that Dillon was out of control, or you could, I mean, gosh, poor Brandon Manesh was too busy fanboying to do his job properly and warn Austin that Denny was there. So Austin didn't get the benefit of anything other than him focusing on getting to the finish line. I mean, so I don't need to even involve the Hamlin piece to decide that Dillon should be penalized. He should have been black flagged and put to the back. I mean, that's just how you do this, or you should. I had enough ammo when he said he shifted into fifth gear to chase Logano down. Think Ross Chastain and the wall melon for a minute. Same thing. Okay. Unless you are NASCAR in a contact sport. Now you have to micromanage the degree of contact or use computer data to decide what you could have done on the spot in the first place. And to me, this goes for all of motorsports. Okay. The black flag is the easiest and best, and it is the most visual deterrent that you can have in motorsports. The thing that's crazy to me is, of all the things they did to Austin Dillon, they allowed him to keep the win. Really? What would you do with that trophy? What does the win mean at this point? It means nothing except for the money. But in the long run, he's in the playoffs only until he's not. Now, the playoffs would have been a couple of million more bucks. But I believe 100%, I will be shocked if this stands. If he's allowed, if the appeal stands. I would be shocked if they won the appeal. I just don't think it's going to happen. So he's going to be back out of the playoffs. Do I think Austin should be penalized? Of course, they should have done it immediately. I don't know why NASCAR has never wanted to do the right thing. To me, if you're going to be a premier division of motorsports, and in a day and age when they're trying to attract a more upscale, more affluent audience and bring investors into the sport, and they're reaching out to the world to try and become international, you ought to be able to have, as Denny calls it, a deterrent system, which I think is what NASCAR's rulebook calls it, that is black and white and enforceable in the race, not days after. Now, let's talk about what happened with Joey's fit of rage after the race ended, shall we? Joey Logano, for those who don't know, drove down pit road way too fast, revving his engine and spinning his tires in front of the Dillon pit. While he was doing this, fans and NASCAR officials had to jump out of the way. There was a crowd of people on pit road. Now, they fined Joey $50,000 for this. To me, that's nothing. $50,000 to Joey Logano is nothing. That needed to be a suspension. He could have injured or killed any number of people. Now we can have a different discussion about whether or not all of those people belong on pit road to begin with. But look, they're not expecting a professional race car driver, and by the way, two-time NASCAR champion, to throw a temper tantrum with his race car after the race is over. This, in my opinion, was far worse than anything Austin Dillon did on the track, and it should have been dealt with far more severely than it was. So drivers don't think they can switch their brain off after the checkered flag. That was ridiculous. Here's my conclusion here. There's no way at this point that NASCAR could have done anything to get out of this situation gracefully, because with all due respect, they bring it on themselves by allowing the contact to happen, encouraging the contact to happen, because they throw it out all over social media and use it to promote, to sell tickets to the next race. There's no way that they get out of this gracefully, no matter what they did, short of, to absolutely take a stand and say, we're done, that's it, no more contact. We're not allowing it, okay? The only way it ends is to begin a zero tolerance policy and start black flagging drivers on the spot consistently and without regard to who it is or how it affects points or anything else. NASCAR, with the decision they've handed down, has not clarified one single bit where the line that Elton Sawyer referred to repeatedly actually is, which means we're going to have more of this in the future. We're going to be right back talking about some other penalty because somebody stepped over this mythical line that nobody can define. And that is our special edition. And that is my opinion on what's going on with this. I hope, honestly, to see nothing but clean, hard racing from the NASCAR Cup Series and all three of their series for the rest of the season. But with the playoffs creeping up, I'm not counting on it.